Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another one of our Wednesday night craft beer tastings. Our topic tonight is dry hop sours, a topic that I've been wanting to do for quite a while, and I've been waiting and waiting for a dry hop sour that I actually wanted to drink, like to actually launch into Alberta, because we've been waiting so bloody long for one. Cellophane Flowers is technically fruited and dry hopped, but I was impatient, so I just said screw it, we're going with it. I'm joined tonight by Jesse Hearing of the 88 Brewing Company in Calgary. Hello, Jesse.
Hey, how's it going?
Oh, you know what? It's good. I've been wanting to do this for so long. I'm so excited to do this. Let's talk a little bit about dry hop sours. I did a lot of digging in, like historically, about dry hop sours and where they came from. There was an article that said, oh, well, the first ones are really like Cantillon Saint-Gilloise and Cantillon Iris. It's like those are completely different things. I mean, yes, they're sours that use fresh hops, but they're not exactly what comes to mind when I think like a dry hop sour. To me, when I was first thinking about this before I dug into it, I was actually thinking upstate New York with the Ithaca Super Friends sour IPAs. And just before dry hop sours started to kind of take off, we saw a little bit of a trend towards those sour IPAs. Do you want to talk about maybe the difference? And for everybody else, we'll pour ourselves a little of the Blindman Kettle Sour here to start. Do you want to talk a little bit about kind of that early sour IPA trend and how that maybe trended into kettle sours today, or were they completely unrelated trends that just happened close together?
Yeah, definitely. I haven't looked into the history of the kettle sour, but I was under the impression as well that it was an American style thing. Basically, the reason why we do it in our brew house is just for efficiency. Naturally, sour beers just take forever to sour just from the natural wild yeast in the air. So by doing kettle sour, we can just do it overnight, pretty much 12 to 15 hours. Usually, we can reach that level of sour that we need, and yeah.
And they're very clearly dry hop sours, not hop sours, because if you boil the hops, it'd be very, very difficult to actually get the souring because hops are so naturally antibacterial. Do you, like for the Duotang, which we'll get to at beer 3, do you do any hops in the boil, or is it 100% dry hopped?
Yeah, sorry, good question. I see what you mean there now. The alpha acids in the hops actually kill all of the lactobacillus, which is what sours the beer in a kettle sour. So I was talking to the brewers today, actually, just to make sure, see exactly what we did for our hop profile. And they only so it's only Amarillo in Duotang, and they only put it in the whirlpool, which is just right after the boil there for anyone that doesn't know what a whirlpool is. We don't put any at all in the boil because, like I said, it just takes longer to sour. So it is very heavily dry hopped, though. Actually, it's slightly more heavily dry hopped than Night Gallery, surprisingly.
Nice. Before we dig into the Blindman here, why don't you tell us a bit about yourself and a bit about 88 in case there are probably some new people who weren't here the last time we talked. So why don't you give us the introduction of who you are, who 88 is, and then I'll talk us through the first couple of beers, and then we'll catch up on Duotang here as well.
Yeah, for sure. So I started at 88 pretty much like right when we opened, one of the first shifts. I started as a bartender there. My friend that's the head brewer, he used to brew in Germany. Then he got this job with 88 in Calgary. And I said, well, you're looking for bartenders. So that's how it started out. And I started helping Jordan. For anyone who knows Jordan, he's one of the owners, just with deliveries and everything like that. And that moved into the sales role that I'm in now. And so 88, for anyone that hasn't been, I mean, I'm not sure how many people that are watching have been there. Obviously, it's more Lethbridge folks. But yeah, obviously 80s vibe, all about good times and all about inclusivity and everything. And the name 88 comes from 1988 Winter Olympics here in Calgary when we came on the world stage. And yeah, it was an awesome time for the city. All the owners were born and raised here in Calgary and lived through that. So yeah, it's awesome to reminisce on it. And if you've ever been by the tap room, it's super bright, neon, and yeah, lots of TVs on the wall and super cool. There's an NES. So yeah.
Yeah, and honestly, like, I know that we're not so much now with COVID, but like, you guys have at least 2 full shelves, I think 2 and a bit on our shelves. And when you go in the tap room, I think that the ones that you can are in the minority compared to what else is on tap. You guys always have at least half your draft lines are like taproom exclusive, which is great. I love it's one of those breweries that's super worth a visit.
Yeah, totally. The first year that we were open, Well, we opened in August, so kind of the second year, but during the first year, we came out with, I believe it was right around 50 small batch beers. So it was pretty much one a week coming out of our small batch system. Some interesting news actually is we just pulled out our small batch system and we just sold it, but we have more quad fermenters coming. So we're coming out with these. If anyone was at Andrew Hilton there last week and got Power Wheels, good for you. That's awesome. Super hard beer to find. So he was the only place in Lethbridge that had it. And we're going to be doing those beers every about 4 weeks, 4 to 6 weeks. We're just using our single size fermenters now. We've kind of upgraded our small batch system just to those 2 fermenters. So now we can actually get it out into the world instead of just taproom exclusives, because before we only got about 400 liters of beer. So now we're getting about 17.5 hex with those small batch beers. So yeah, pretty cool and exciting. We won't obviously hit that 50 beer mark this year, but yeah.
But you'll be aiming for it next year, I think. Yeah.
I don't know, those brewers, we don't want to drive them that hard, so need to give them a little bit of a break.
Yeah, we already had some requests for more dial-up. Please, we need this.
More dial-up.
More dial-up.
I know, that's a fan favorite. It's awesome. I love it as well. So a lot of those beers will probably make returns, to be honest, especially when we get some more fermenters and more tank space. We love bringing back beers like that were hits and everyone keeps asking for them. So I would say probably not this year, but you might see it again early next year.
Nice.
We'll probably definitely be back. Yeah.
Cool. That's a discouraging thing to hear in January, but that's all right. Let's talk a little bit about the beer that we actually have in our glasses here. This is Blindman's double dry hopped Kettle Sour, which they now just call the Kettle Sour. For a very long time, this came in small cans, and they were the blank silver cans with the handwritten labels. They actually went through 14 different iterations of this beer, starting in 2015, actually December of 2015, right up through 2020. They went through the 14 different ones, always the same base beer, always the same souring component, and then it was always the hopping that was different. When they actually settled on a final list of hops for it, they ended up coming down on Columbus, Mandarina Bavaria, Hallertau Blanc, and Citra. Hallertau Blanc's a hop that's rapidly becoming one of my favorites that kind of came out of nowhere.
Yeah, totally. It's one of those new kind of, well, sorry, it's not a new hop, I should say, but up and coming in the at least North American craft beer scene. And that was obviously it's one of your favorites because we used it in dial-up there, your favorite beer of the year. So
yeah.
It's very neat. Like, so it's kind of white wine notes that you get with it, white grapes. So definitely something that's more unique.
And I hope you're proud of yourself, Jesse. You made Kevin cry.
I made Kevin cry.
You made Kevin cry because there's no more dial-up this year.
Oh no! I thought you meant tears of joy. No, that's tears of...
No, tears of profound sadness. Me too, really. I'm just crying on the inside because I'm on camera. It'd be weird if I just broke down weeping.
Yeah.
So the Blindman Kettle Sour here with those 4 beers, or those 4 different hops in it. I was a little surprised when I tasted these before we went live, and it was actually the lightest of them because I remember this being like really aggressive. But in fact, it's very light. It's very delicate. I don't get any, and I'm a little surprised with Columbus in there. I don't get any of those kind of 3C hops. I don't get any of that typical grapefruit and everything else that I normally would get on like a classic Cascade or Centennial or Chinook. It's much lighter. It's much more delicate. I definitely get the Citra. I mean, Mandarina
I don't have one
suggests,
in front of me, so.
Yeah. Sorry, I know you don't. I'm trying to... I had a really good idea in mind with this, and I had something for each of us to talk about. But yeah, it's going to be a bit of a thing.
No, it's all good. I've had a few iterations. I was just thinking back actually when it was in the short cans, like you were saying, and they had a few different labels where I believe they changed up the label. That label's definitely different. But
yes.
I've had ones that I remember they were like way less sour, way more sour, and then definitely different notes on them as well on the nose because, like you said, they changed up the hop profile. But they must have also changed the pH on it because I know that there were some that definitely were nowhere near as sour as others. But yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, changing and dialing in a recipe and how recipes evolving over time, that's certainly something you're familiar with. I mean, would you say that Wavepool's even close to the same beer it was when it launched?
No, yeah, we talked about that last time. Definitely nowhere near the same. Well, I mean, I shouldn't say nowhere near the same. It's still kind of American style IPA, but we used to start a Sactois yeast. So it's kind of like a hybrid wild yeast. It takes a lot longer to ferment. You get a lot more normally like tropical notes with it, but from a brew house efficiency standpoint, it didn't really make sense for our production schedule. It was really hard, so we changed to US 05, but we still maintained all those tropical aromas with the hop profile, more of an East Coast style hop profile with a West Coast style base malt.
Yeah, and I've really liked that. All right, moving on here. We're going to go to our second beer here. This is from Four Winds. This is their Nectarist dry hop sour, now thankfully in cans. We talked about this a lot last week, where kind of our big superstar beers that we used to get only in bombers with the Breakside West Coast IPA and the Breakside Wanderlust IPA that for years were our best-selling beers out in the, not 16 ounce, those 24-ounce bombers. Those were our biggest sellers. The other one for us that was really big seller was the Four Winds, both the Juxtapoz and the Nectarous in that same size. And now both of those are coming in the 4-packs, which I really like. This also came out in 2015. And I do want to actually circle back to that date in particular. When I was doing all the research for this and all the history on this, everybody was basically giving like this style emerged in 2015 start date for these. And it's like, so we in Western Canada were right at that bleeding edge. We weren't playing catch up at all. We were right there, which is absolutely fantastic.
Exactly, yeah. You always think that BC's a little bit ahead of us, but honestly right now we're pretty much on par with them, I would say. So.
Yeah. And it's funny, like Alberta's kind of becoming a little bit like Montana was 10 years ago, where when you talk to people about the great beer cities, you would talk about, Grand Rapids area for Michigan because you had Bell's and you had Dark Horse and you had everything else that was in Kunins that was happening in that area. And then you talk about, Vermont was happening, and of course, like San Francisco and San Diego and Portland and all that. But Missoula was a really amazing beer town, and it was really just a happening place to be. Calgary's kind of turning into that a little bit. It's a bit of a hidden gem.
Yeah, totally. Pretty crazy. In the last 2 years, what are we up to now? I don't know the actual number of who have physical like brick and mortar breweries, but we must be up in the high 20s. I know we're over 30, but some are contract brewing and whatnot. And a couple I think have maybe fizzled out, and a couple closed unfortunately. But yeah, we're still in that high 20 mark for sure. And it's pretty crazy. Definitely in these last 2 years, Calgary has upped their game like crazy.
I agree. One thing that actually, something you said earlier that just you just twinged something for me. A lot of breweries either are entirely or in part doing some contract brewing. Doesn't sound like you guys are at all. It sounds like you're just adding more and more and more tanks crammed in that building, and bigger and bigger tanks.
Some people think we're a little bit crazy for that. I think, I think it's a great thing that we do that. We stay in control of all of our beer, right? It's our recipe. We stay in control. We make sure it passes all of our lab tests, and we know exactly what's going on with the beer. And logistically, it's way easier to come out of our brew house off our canning machine. And yes, during COVID, it probably, financially would have made sense to go and contract brew, but it's just something we wanted to avoid. And after talking to a couple other brewers, things can happen with contract brewing. It doesn't always go perfectly. It doesn't always go smoothly. And yeah, there's just something to be said about keeping it all in-house. And, I understand why some other breweries also need to do that. We're super fortunate that we have a huge space and we can just keep adding more fermenters. And then obviously, like we're doing now, swapping out the pilot breath system for a couple more quad fermenters. And we've got ourselves a storage bay and everything. But yeah, I know there's some breweries that are they can't really expand in the space they're in. So contract brewing is kind of the reality for them. And yeah, there's nothing wrong with it. It's just,
it's not the reality of growing as fast as some breweries have grown.
Exactly, yeah, totally.
I'm going to go through a couple of comments here. Eric said some of those earlier iterations of the Blindman were quite challenging. They were for me as well. And when I talked to Nick Pentelchuk from Blindman, he was talking about, we had some that would sell really, really well, and then we'd release a new one, and it'd sell really well for the first 2 weeks till people realized it was a new one and they didn't like it as much, and it would just, stop. and we get really excited about a new one, and we had to wait for this old one that people just decided they didn't like to like clear out, and then we get rid of that, and that was the only one. We got like 5 emails that people loved it, and it's like, you're the only 5 people. Like, you have to just, I can't imagine trying to do something like that. Have you ever had like somebody come back on you and say, oh, well, you changed your recipe, now I don't like it anymore?
Yeah, that definitely happened. It's not as often as that, but we have had some emails that people said, you changed something with, I don't like it anymore. And we kind of go, well, you know, I guess that was one iteration of it, and it always does slowly change. None of our recipes have drastically changed, aside from whey pool was probably the biggest change, obviously with the yeast change and everything like that. But no, we haven't had, it's mostly good feedback, but definitely there were, sometimes you get an email and someone doesn't like it, or, you know, we've even had problems sometimes. You'll just get a can won't seal properly, and you only get 1 out of the 4. It tastes really off. So it happens sometimes, you know, you always, a lot of the time, especially if you have a 4-pack, like try the other one before you write the whole thing off. There are issues, especially in craft brewing, craft brewing, that stuff like that will happen sometimes. So.
Cool. Let's talk about the 4 wins here. This is their Nectarous Dry Hop Sour. This was, honestly, when I was doing my top 10 beers, my big, I did a lot of work for that because I wanted to talk about kind of everything that I was excited about last year. I wanted to talk about different styles I was excited about. And yes, it did end up being 2 IPAs and 2 sours because, you know, that's all we really did all year. But I did talk about some of the other styles. This Nectarous almost made the cut for me. It just fell short, just behind the Jamrock, actually. I love how complex and how spicy this is. It's got, somebody actually pointed out, it's got a little bit more pine on this one. It definitely has more bitterness. I said when we were tasting it, I'm surprised how little bitterness there is in the Blindman. None of these should be bitter beers because traditionally to get that bitterness from the hops, you have to boil them. But even dry hopping, it will contribute some, at least, perception of bitterness, even if it doesn't actually have IBUs. I really like this because, it has those big pine drop notes. I mean, this is a beer from 2015. And the other thing to think about is this beer has been effectively unchanged since 2015, which was before New England IPA was really a thing, whereas this has been developed and redeveloped and changed as tastes in hopping and tastes in hop beers have changed as well. I wonder if this one is maybe a little more juicy and a little more East Coast as tastes changed. When they finalized it, that was where it ended up. Whereas with this, it's basically, this is how we made it in 2015. With some modifications, this is basically how it still is.
Yeah.
Did you want to comment something about the bitterness note? I heard you want to chime in there for a sec.
Just in terms of, with kettle sours in general, it is very hard to get them that bitter. So they might be dry hopping at a time to get that little bit of extra bite over the Blindman. It's been a while. I do love Nectarist. I remember it being a little bit more sour than the Duotang as well, and also different fruit notes on it, more of like a stone fruit, whereas ours is more citrusy. Now, again, it's been a while. I wish I had one to do a side-by-side exactly, and then I'd really know, but
And to be fair, like it was a bad timing. You're moving. You're in like your new house right now. There's a whole bunch of moving boxes behind you just off camera.
Yeah.
And I didn't actually. Normally, when I do these sorts of things, and there's going to be beers for the guests that they're not going to have. Normally, I drop it off, but I went to Calgary on the Tuesday before this, and I didn't have a chance to actually put a 4-pack together for you because I was out of. I think it was just out of Nectarous until we actually got to the Wednesday. So I wasn't actually in Calgary in time to drop these off. I guess I could have mailed them, but I didn't think of it. So I apologize for that. That is absolutely my fault.
No worries. Yeah, it's been just crazy couple of days just with the move and everything like that. And then Fred, my dog there, he hasn't been sleeping very well the last couple of nights. So I've only got a few hours sleep the last couple of nights. So it's just mayhem, but it's all good.
Now you're going to get dog questions. Craig asks, how much of a challenge has it been to come into the vacant Alberta craft beer market? Now, I wouldn't say it was vacant when you guys got started. It was already starting to blow up. But do you want to talk about the challenges of starting a new brewery into Alberta? Yeah,
it was 2 years ago was when everyone was opening up pretty much, right? We had a few that were open before that, like obviously Danny and Annex have been around a little bit longer, but us, Cabin, Establishment, we all kind of opened up right at the same time there. Luckily, our ownership group had been coming up with this business plan for a couple of years, so we were pretty set from the get-go. At the very beginning, so say getting, into new liquor stores and bars around Calgary, right at the beginning, they were still pretty accepting of it, and it was pretty easy kind of to walk in and talk to someone, and they had a little bit of shelf space. I'd say probably after about the 1 year mark, it started getting pretty tough when everyone else was starting to get their beer to market and get it in cans and everything like that. You had quite a bit more competition. Luckily, obviously, we made it through that, and we're quite well established, so it's nice going into places, and they kind of know you and everything, and they know our products, and that it sells quite well. And yeah, a lot of the time I just say, honestly, I think we had a lot going for us. We had awesome brewers, awesome marketing team, and great design, right? It's pretty cool brand, pretty cool cans. They really pop out on the shelf.
If you do say so yourself.
Exactly, yeah. Just, that's why I'm saying. Let's take that as a salt. But it was definitely summer challenge. It wasn't anything too crazy. It wasn't a huge hurdle, but it was,
Now, speaking of getting into stores, we're now on to the Duotang, by the way, so we'll talk about tasting notes here in a second. But speaking of getting into stores, I know when I first started dealing with you guys, I was driving up every week and picking it up right from the brewery, and you guys are like, who the hell is this asshole? And then you started coming down kind of, I think it was about the start of COVID, you started making a trip down about once a month, so we started getting deliveries. But big news this week, you guys are now in the provincial wholesaler, so you can order it anywhere in Alberta, at least the core line. What all do you have in Connect now to go kind of province-wide, and how's that early rollout going for you?
Yeah, so we just did Night Gallery and Wave Pool in Connect, just because, we kind of planned it like that. I know some breweries kind of rush into Connect and everything, and then you can move a lot of product in Connect. And we wanted to make sure we had the production capacity for that, so we have 2 quad fermenters pretty much just set aside for Night Gallery and Wave Pool. And then when we have 2 more coming, and when those are online, we'll probably get Ring Pop into Connect as well. So right now, just the 2 beers, and the roll has been good. Yeah, we sent up 240 flasks of each, and it was pretty well what we expected. We had some accounts that we knew were going to order right away. They were asking, they'll only order from Connect, We really appreciate, obviously, the accounts. You drove up every week, and that's amazing, and that's why we support you so much. And but yeah, no, the rollout's been pretty smooth. It took just a lot of work reading all the manuals and everything before that. But yeah, everything's good with it. And so the main thing was reaching out to all of the small towns and everything in Alberta that we can't direct deliver to. We have a Northern Alberta sales rep, and he kind of pretty much goes along the QE2 and Edmonton and just outside of Edmonton. But, we're not driving up to Grand Prairie every 2 weeks or whatever, right? It just it doesn't make sense. It's another 5 hours past Edmonton.
Well, no, so, that's an interesting thing. It was a question I wanted to actually lead into here is, for those of you who don't know, Liquor Connect is a provincial wholesaler that has what they call a postage stamp shipping system. So whether you live, if you've got a liquor store 50 feet outside the Connect gates, or if you're in Lethbridge, or if you're out in the Crosness Pass, or if you're way up in northern Alberta by Slave Lake, the cost for a 4-pack of Wave Pool or of Night Gallery is exactly the same for everybody. So the fact that everybody in Alberta, no matter where they are, can get it, have you had it show up any weird places? Because I know you have those Connect reports where you can kind of, is there anywhere it's like, we never sent a rep within 500 kilometers of here. Why are they ordering this?
Yeah, exactly. The one that popped up, I searched, it was actually a Sobeys, and I was like, oh, what's this? Because they just named Lakeside or something like that, Sobeys Lakeside. And I searched up on Google Maps, and it was literally at the very end of the highway in northern Alberta. There was no town name, so I can't even tell you where it was. It was by Fort something or other, and not Fort McMurray. It was further north than that. So it's kind of fun. You can get Night Gallery up. I think they ordered, I don't know if they ordered one of each or just Wave Pool or something like that. But anyway, you get the far reaches like that, right? We would never, ever direct deliver there because it doesn't make sense. But Liquor Connect is amazing for that. We still do most of our direct deliveries in the city on our own, but yeah, we did pick up a few new accounts in the city as well, just because from a licensee standpoint, it makes more sense for some people, more of a convenience thing for them to order from Connect. So we picked up some of those accounts.
I'll be honest, I mean, the difference between me having to take 6 flats every other week of wave pool versus, oh, I'm just a little short this week, I'll throw a couple. I'll still probably order occasionally from Connect if I find myself short. It happens. Not so much now with no bars, but I know, like, if 2 guys and the country club and somebody else all ordered it the same week, I could actually run my shelves dry of Night Gallery. It's kind of nice having Connect as a fallback. So, is Fred getting a little barky?
Yeah, he's getting a little antsy. He hasn't gone for his nighttime walk yet, but definitely I've let a lot of the accounts know. I've let a lot of our accounts know that if they just need a top up in between our deliveries, feel free to order it off of Connect. It makes sense for everyone, and it's just slightly more expensive for licensee as well, so it's nothing too crazy. But yeah, it's an awesome system that we have in place here in Alberta, and we're super thankful for it now that we're in there. And yeah, we should it'll make us through a lot of beer this year, I'm pretty sure. So yeah,
cool. Got a lot of love for Power Wheels here. Yeah, desperate for more Power Wheels. Can we get more Power Wheels? I'll take a flat. We killed that 4-pack of Power Wheels in minutes. Yeah. Important question, is Fred a good boy?
Fred? Yeah,
yes.
He's biting my thumb right now. Here, you can see Fred if you want. Forgive the mess. Where is he? Fred.
There he is.
Oh, there he is.
Oh, he's a very good boy.
Yeah, hi, Fred. Yeah, he's good. Like I said, he's just getting a little antsy right now. He's been really good up until about 10 minutes ago. So, but yeah, on the Power Wheels front, that was they did an awesome job with that. They used, if for anyone that saw the Instagram post, we finally got our hands on some incognito hops, which they're very hard to get right now, just because the manufacturing process for them. Obviously, you're taking a whole hop and then use CO2 extraction to get kind of this, not quite an oil, it's this weird like gloopy stuff. You get a big like 4-liter jug of it or something like that, and then we just press that out. So what it does is it eliminates a lot of the vegetal flavors you can get with using pelletized hops. So we can dry hop it really heavily and just get those nice citrusy notes through it or juicy notes through it without getting something to get. I noticed a lot in some heavily dry hop beers. It's kind of a bit of like a grassiness, which is pretty off-putting. So it was a pretty neat first beer to try, and just solely mosaic as well, so you can really get a flavor of what the mosaic tastes like. So yeah, but
awesome. So I got a couple of things here. First off, I mean, we've talked about a lot of stuff tonight, but let's talk about Duotang. It's the beer we brought you here to walk us through. So let's do the thing we brought you here to do.
Perfect. Yeah. So Duotang is part of our core lineup. I know a lot of breweries don't actually have a sour in their core lineup, and like I was talking about earlier, it's all about brew house efficiency. Brewing these sours is pretty tough to do on a large scale. Reason being that it ties up your brew house overnight, right? So we can't do a double of it in one day. We have to brew it, let it sit on a blanket of CO2 around, I believe it's between 60 and 70 degrees overnight. It'll sour just because we use Lactobacillus plantarum, a pure culture. It thrives in an anaerobic state. So you just need that blanket of CO2 on there. And then if we're doing a double of it, right, we need to then brew it again the next day and then let it sit overnight again. So you tie up your brew house for at least 2 full days, whereas we can brew a quad in that amount of time, right? So pretty much takes twice as long to brew. But yeah, we still keep in the core lineup. It's pretty cool to have a sour in there. Really kind of expands your portfolio. And yeah, in terms of what it is itself, non-fruited, just Amarillo, like I was saying earlier. So, wow. He's getting a little antsy. Sorry.
That's all right. Do you need to put him outside?
Sorry, what was that?
Do you need to put him outside or something? Because we can give you a couple minutes to deal with Fred, and we'll.
Give me one second. He's
no problem, man. I'll actually. answer one of John's question about the Country Club only serving Rolly Rock and Sleeman Honey. Country Club brought in a new food and beverage manager last year named Kirsten. Honestly, one of the best food and beverage, specifically beverage professionals I've ever worked with. She changed the wine and beer program in particular absolutely drastically, and I don't want to tell any secrets or anything, but they placed an order for developing the bar about a month ago because they're doing a bit of research on what they want to do. I think you're going to be pleased with the spirits program as well. Things at the Country Club have really changed. They got, as everybody did, a little bit screwed over with COVID last year, but they wanted to do tasting flights, wine dinners. They completely changed the, I don't know if it's necessarily the draft program so much, but their can selection, they either had 3 or 4 different 88 beers. They really changed things up down there. So if you've only known the Country Club pre-last year, the new food and beverage director is absolutely spectacular. So, no. Yeah, Fred's having a bad night. But that's okay. So I pretty openly carry a pretty big torch for Duotang. I did kind of give this tasting a little bit of the unofficial title of my love letter to Duotang. I just wanted to talk about this because it's very unfairly one of the slowest selling 88 beers. I mean, we can sell Night Gallery and Wave Pool with our eyes closed. The new seasonals, they come off the shelf as quickly as they go on. Tiffany depends on the customer. Ring Pop's an interesting one. I'll actually ask Jesse about that in a moment. But the rest of the lineup does very, very well. Duotang has always somehow underperformed, and I think that's an absolute shame because I think this should sell as well as Jamrock. It just does different things. The Jamrock's very sweet and friendly and kind of wintry and just, it's like a blackberry tart in a glass. This is like a really top flight IPA. It just happens to be sour.
Sorry about that. I don't know where right now there though, but Fred ran outside and the new neighbors just met him, so he was pretty excited. But
it's a big night
sorry,
for
did
Fred.
You want me to kind of resume where I was with?
Yeah, by all means. Yeah, I kind of got into a side and I answered some questions. I will just quickly answer one more here real quickly. Jeremy, actually, the Country Club dining room is open to the general public. You don't have to be a member to eat there. But go ahead.
Perfect. Yeah. So let's see. I was just talking about the hop profile there. Yeah, it's solely with Amarillo hops. And yeah, we actually dry hop it heavier than Night Gallery, about 8 grams per liter. And yeah, like I said, we just do a little bit in the whirlpool, gives it that aroma, and then almost all of it in the dry hop. And the Amarillo gives it really nice grapefruit heavy. I mostly get grapefruit in there. Some people, I can't really smell from the can that well, but I get a little bit of stone fruit in there as well, maybe some mango.
I can see mangoes, yeah, but I definitely think that the citrus is stealing the show.
Yeah, definitely citrusy. That's what I always go for. So yeah, it's a super refreshing sour. We soured down to about, I was talking to Carson, one of the brewers today, and the last few batches have been 3.4 on the pH scale. Now, what that means is it's not extremely sour. It's not going to strip the enamel off your teeth kind of thing. You can drink a couple of them. Our typical beers, say Night Gallery, is about a 4.4 to 4.5 pH. So it's actually 10 times more sour than Night Gallery, which seems like a lot, but no, it's super well balanced, in my opinion at least. Non-fruited and just refreshing, just those grapefruit notes. So a great all-around beer to round out one of our core lineup beers.
Nice. And one thing that a lot of people, not so much these days, but I used to get this question a lot about 2 years ago, and I do want to clarify this. Modern sour beers, especially if they're going to come in like a 4-pack tall cans, these aren't Brett soured beers. There's no Brettanomyces to this. This is entirely using lactobacillus. Because Brett's really, really, really slow and really hard to clean if it gets into anything. Have you guys ever done a Bretted beer? And what's your experience with working with them? And how is a Bretted sour beer different from a lactose soured beer?
Yeah, great question. So we have kind of... Sorry. My girlfriend's just home now, so that means that Fred should be preoccupied and shouldn't be barking anymore. So
Hooray!
that's good. Yeah, and so a beer that is fermented with Brettanomyces. That's a wild yeast. So we have done a few of them. Have we done a sour though? That's a good question. I don't believe we have. We've done a couple saisons. The last one we did was just let me think. It'll come back to me in a second.
I think we actually got a 30 liter of it at the start of COVID, and I can't remember the name either.
Oh, okay. That was Ketar. So
yes.
We do a couple. Now you have to be very careful with them. Like you're saying, brewhouse cleanliness is a huge part of using Brettanomyces. It can affect all of your beers. It can affect your brew house. You have to be super careful. We actually have completely different kegs that we use for it, and it's extremely slow moving. Usually we age those beers for months it takes to ferment. We do a primary fermentation and then a secondary fermentation on Brettanomyces. And we just keep letting that go on for months and months, and you can let that go for, even some people sell their beers for years, and it keeps changing consistently. The yeast will create different phenols and eat different sugars, and lots of weird things happen. So we do some of them. We got to be careful with them. A lot of times it's smart to do the primary fermentation in our normal fermenters and then do the secondary in a barrel. So a lot of our barrel aged beers, we will throw a little bit in there, and sometimes it just randomly picks it up. You look inside the barrel and you're like, oh, okay, something's going on in there. And it turns out, I just thought of the name of the beer, actually. The last one we did was called Battle Cast. I'm not sure if anyone had it. I believe I got you a couple cases of it, possibly, maybe. I don't know.
Maybe. I don't specifically remember it, but I'll be honest. So. I mean, during the height of COVID, it was basically me, Devin, and Nigel working here, and we were all working 10-hour days and running around like lunatics. So large parts of my memory of that are, missing. So no, I'm not entirely sure if we actually got Battle Cat or not. I am going to just jump away here.
I can't remember either.
Yeah, you know what? If we did, awesome. If we didn't,
Duotang.
Yeah, I know, right? Love this beer so much. I'm glad we finally got to have like a tasting just about Duotang.
Yeah, this
yeah. Okay, shall we do Shameless Promotion Corner?
Hell yeah.
Yeah, let's talk about it real fast.
Sure.
So we are just going to step away here for a second, Jesse. We'll be back with you in a second. We have a beer tasting coming up next week. And we are going to have Rupert Manguel, who is the Southern Alberta sales rep for Annex. He'll be joining us this coming Wednesday. Yes, we have done a brewery profile tasting for Annex before, but the folks from Annex were busy and couldn't join us. And also our relationship with Annex has changed. Back in those days, we basically just got the core range and any seasonals that hit Connect, which was kind of one every 6 months. Now I'm up at Annex about as often as I'm up at Establishment or Cabin or 88. So we're getting access to more seasonals and more different things. So we're going to do 4 beers. We're going to do my favorite Annex beer that's a regular listing, which is the Forward Progress Pale Ale. We're going to do their Good Authority Golden Ale because post-lager tasting, I've really come to appreciate these simpler, clean, like very subtle expressions, and I actually do genuinely enjoy Good Authority. We're going to do the Rinse Cycle, which is a very delicate interpretation of a New England Pale Ale. You'll be surprised how restrained this is, and I find it very refreshing. And then finally, we'll go with Retracted Resolutions, their Belgian Double, which is the only one on the table I haven't had. So that'll be fun to discover together. Coming up this Friday, we have our very first small bottle, single ounce Scotch tasting, and I want to open with a giant thank you to all of you because these little heels, which contain less than an ounce each, these are our second bottles of all of these. I spent my Tuesday last week after I got back from Calgary, putting all of these into little tiny 1 ounce samples. I figured, we'll do 22 plus 1 for me. We'll have 22 sample kits for everybody, plus 1 ounce to wasted loss. That'll be enough for our first Scotch tasting. Like, we're not going to sell more than 22. We're now halfway sold through the second bottles of everything, and it's only Wednesday. We still have 2 more days to sell this thing. So, giant thanks to everybody because, I did not expect to sell this sort of volume. So these are the 4 whiskeys we're tasting. You're going to get an ounce of each along with the tasting notes and everything else online as part of the video. And that is $30 for the kit. And that will be this Friday night. Next Friday, I'm not actually going to put the wines up on display, but we are going to do the, for those of you who watch the wine tastings regularly, we are going to do the tasting I've talked about, the best grape varieties you've never heard of. So all that is coming right up. Let's dive back in. Final thoughts on Duotang, or everybody watching, questions for Jesse. I mean, 88's a pretty incredible brewery. They got a lot of things going on. Any other questions?
Yeah, feel free to ask away, anything and everything.
This is a question for me. Eric, very excited for a better relationship with Annex. Were they a bit aloof compared to Established in 88? Actually, the exact opposite. I was the aloof one. I had a bit of a, not a bad taste in my mouth with dealing with Annex. I remember dealing with Annex when they only were bombers, and I really loved the beers right from the start. I don't know if it was the packaging or the fact that bombers were kind of going out of style at the time or what it was, but I got so frustrated and upset because I couldn't give these Annex beers away. And then, you know, I kind of said, oh, well, maybe they're just not popular. Maybe I'm just wrong. Maybe they're not that great. You kind of start doubting yourself with that. And that was kind of how I felt about Annex. I now have gone full circle, and for those of you who watched my Best Beers video, I named the original Echoes basically the runner-up to the dial-up. Unfortunately, that was out in August, so obviously there was none left. But yeah, no, Annex I've really come full circle on. It wasn't that they were aloof, it was that I was aloof. Oh, here's an interesting question. I'll let you get this one first because I want to have more time to think about it. What do you think is the next big thing, and where is craft beer going?
Interesting. Yeah, we always talk about, obviously, up-and-coming trends. We see a lot of them from the United States first and from Europe. We were talking earlier before we started there, and one big up-and-coming is low ABV. A lot of people just want more of a sessionable beer, something they can drink a little bit more. So we're probably going to foray into that a little bit, try a couple of different ones, see how they sell, see if it really is an upcoming trend. And yeah, trying to hit that low ABV market. In terms of a lot of craft breweries as well now are getting into the RTD market, or the ready-to-drink market, if a lot of people haven't heard of that before. So that's kind of an interesting thing. You know, it takes a little bit of work from a distillery as well, because you need to get vodka or gin from them. But that is something that is up and coming, and we're going to be honestly experimenting with here in a couple months. I mean, we have before. If anyone that's been to the tap room has had Pretty in Pink, that's their vodka soda in collaboration with Confluence Distilling, and it's awesome. So you may see that out in the wild here in the next couple months. But it's something that, now that we have a canning machine, we can do it. But logistically, it can be tough. It comes in and out of the tank really quickly, but it's just another product in our lineup. And it's not craft beer. That's what we're focused on. Another up-and-coming trend, I would say, is the non-alcoholic area. So actually, yeah, non-alcoholic. I'm not sure if we were talking about that last time I was there. We also talked about...
No, and you just stole my answer, so thank you for that.
Oh, there we go. Okay, well, here.
Now I've got to come up with something better.
You can... go on that point as well, because I'm not too familiar with any of the non-alcoholic breweries in Canada or the United States, or even in town. I know a couple of the bigger ones have done some non-alcoholics, but yeah, you're probably more familiar with them than I am.
I think it's one of the fastest growing categories. I haven't yet had any of the alcohol-free spirits, which are basically just water and sugar with, you know, some botanicals added to make it taste like gin, or somehow barrel-aged or a barrel-aged flavor to make like a brown spirit. I haven't had a chance to try any of those, but I will say the quality of alcohol-free craft beer has jumped up sharply. We did a bit of a IPAs through history tasting, and tasting Red Racer IPA now versus a West Coast IPA now. I think we actually did it against Wave Pool. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong. No, it was the Cabin Seasons Pass is actually the West Coast IPA we did that was like our modern example. And by God, things have changed. But the point I was going to make is like Red Racer is now making an alcohol-free IPA, which whatever you might think about Red Racer IPA these days is still leaps and bounds better than anything in the non-alcohol category 4 years ago. Village has introduced their local pale ale and local stout, which are really nice alcohol-free beers. Hogarden's got a new alcohol-free out, which is honestly a bit of a guilty pleasure. We talked about this a little bit last week, where like Rickard's White is, or whatever they're calling it this week, Belgian Moon, is a bit of a guilty pleasure for me. I like those kind of super juicy orangey wheat beers, so I still like Hogarden. And as an alcohol-free beer, that's probably the one I'd be most likely to pick up. You know, the day pigs fly and I buy an alcohol-free beer. But, you know, it could happen. No, it can't. But yeah, I mean, the alcohol-free category is absolutely growing by leaps and bounds, and it's happily as it is growing, the market is actually adjusting, and we're starting to see some better offerings in there. The other one that we've talked about a little bit to death is kind of the reemergence of West Coast IPAs in a bit of a new style. West Coast IPA with lessons learned from New England. I'd even say like the emergence of, I call it a no-coast IPA, like the wave pool that's a little bit east and a little bit west. I'm starting to see a little bit more of that. It's not a West Coast IPA. It's not a New England IPA. This is our new IPA. Is it East Coast or West Coast? Yes, it's an IPA. Drink it. It's great. And I kind of like that. I like that there's kind of this new school of IPA making that's like, yep, we learned a lot from the old days. We learned a lot from like the Lagunitas, Russian River, super pale stuff. Then there was New England. Now we're here. And I kind of like the direction IPA is going. We're starting to take it in new, challenging places. Beyond that, I'm kind of liking just how much, at least with smaller batches, I talked about this a little bit last week, but like one of my favorite beers last year was the Left My Wallet in El Segundo, which was a smoked fruited sour, none of which are categories that, especially smoked, is not a style I particularly care for. I absolutely loved that. And I like that we're starting to see not beer styles that are, you know, crazy for the sake of being crazy. It's not a bourbon and vanilla and chili pepper, rum and bourbon barrel aged imperial stout at 14.5% alcohol, because fuck you. It's actually like a historical beer style. I can't remember the style it was some obscure German smoked lager sour. That they and then added pineapple to and kind of made something a little bit their own. I kind of like that aspect of it, that, you know, we've already kind of dug up things like Kolsch and kind of brought them back into the mainstream. I like that we're even taking that another layer and finding like forgotten beer styles. I think I'd like to see even more of that.
Yeah, that was a really interesting beer. I actually had that one in establishment tap room, and then I got it, and I was like, this is going to be interesting. But I mean, they pull off every one of their beers, so it was awesome. Very unique. I mean, I probably only have like, you know, one of them, but it was still like, it was still fast.
I'm reading the questions right now. Sorry. I've got people like, read the questions.
Yeah, go ahead.
It's like, I'm reading the damn questions. And it's a whole bunch of people talking about like sausage smoothies, and that's not something I'm going to ask a guest.
Actually, did someone say smoothie beers? That's, now that you say it, that is one of the upcoming trends for this year, and we do have one. We're most likely going to brew it within the next few weeks here, and it'll be very limited, but you should hopefully see a couple of flats at your store. So
cool.
It's very interesting. We've done lots of obviously fruited sours and fruited beers. These smoothie beers are more along the lines of about 40% fruit puree, so they're crazy vibrant colors and super hazy, and they look like a smoothie, right? Just the consistency of it is even different. So we're going to be brewing one of those shortly, and it should be interesting. To give like kind of a frame of reference, a heavily fruited beer like Summer Camp Crush had about 20% fruit puree, so it's double that, right?
Nice. Here's a great one. What did you brew this year, with the understanding you're not the brewmaster? What did 88 brew this year that surprised you, either in terms of how it turned out or in terms of how it sold?
That's a good question. Let's see. Going back, A really interesting one that actually, yeah, sold a lot better accounts than I thought it would, just because of the style of it, slower moving beer, was our skeleton crew. So it was kind of neat. During COVID, we called it like red team, blue team, right? So just so we didn't interact with each other, we were working, what was it? I think it was 2 days on, 2 days off, or 4 days on, 4 days off, something like that. And yeah, the skeleton crew was the one that brewed this beer. It was a Fig Newton barley wine. I know you got a couple flats of that. That's actually the one that came in the landline boxes, but it was sold individually.
We actually featured that in our Barley Wines week. It was a lot of fun.
There we go. Okay, yeah.
God, that was a boozy ass after. That was, I think that was the biggest like runaway one we've ever done. Imperial Stout was actually it was very restrained and controlled because of lessons learned from Barley Wine Week.
Yeah, that was a wild one. That one, it was still pretty hot even after it aged for a while. That one so in the mash, we actually did put a bunch of Fig Newtons in the mash. And then while it was sitting in the fermenter for a few months, we put some, obviously, figs and vanilla in there. And it was something pretty wild and crazy. And yeah, I really enjoyed that one. That's one that popped out that was quite a bit different. Battle Cat, obviously, like I was saying earlier, that was our Brett beer that came out. Turned out, it actually wasn't even, the funny thing about it wasn't supposed to be a Brett beer, but it was sitting in the barrel, and then we opened up the barrel and looked inside, and we're like, what's going on here? And yeah, the brewers tried it, and it played well. So it was just a subtle kind of, barnyard, leathery kind of, I actually, for some reason with Brett beers, I always get notes of the candy rockets. I don't know why. No one else usually gets it, but for some reason I get rockets, and Battle Cat had a lot of that. So those were kind of our two cool, really limited, small batch beers.
But was there anything you put out in the 4-packs that kind of surprised you? Like, did anything really change? Did anything, like, really go up in terms of sales or really go down in sales? Like, did Duotang have a huge growth year? Or I noticed here, like, Ring Pop was all anybody wanted to drink, and then Ring Pop kind of fell off for us.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about that a little bit? Was that something you saw as well?
Yeah, so actually the beer I was just about to talk about, once you mention that again, it's kind of interesting, the progression we did. Yeah, Ring Pop had a huge climb up there and was doing awesome, and actually won bronze at the Canadian Brewing Awards for New England IPA, which is, one of the hardest categories there is. So kudos to the brewers. They did an awesome job with that. And then what we started doing is it came out with a couple of small batch. You remember Warp Whistle? Mm-hmm. So again, the New England style IPA, but even bigger, right? We put a ton of honey in there, and that one just stole the show. Everyone loved that beer, and it sold like crazy. So that was one that definitely, we started noticing these small batch just moving. Yeah, I mean, the brewers did an awesome job with it as well, but they just moved like hotcakes. It was just insane to see. And I think it's a similar style to Ring Pop as well. So I think it kind of stole the light from Ring Pop a little bit. And that's probably why we saw the sales dip a little bit. And then as well, we came up with, obviously, Dial Up, a hazy IPA, not quite to the same extent as what Ring Pop is. But again, a couple beers like that did steal a little bit of sales from Ring Pop. But yeah,
I also think that when Ring Pop premiered, it was the best IPA you had. And I think Wave Pool is now handsomely the best IPA you have. And I think Wave Pool has actually cannibalized Ring Pop sales as it has improved as a beer. Because it's, I think, easily your best IPA these days. Other than Dial Up, which we'll never see again until 2021. Because you hate Kevin. And that's fair enough. So, easy.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. Very good point. Yeah, the Wave Pool, they've got that one locked in now. So I think, and it's hard to say. I think us at the brewery do the same thing. We're like, oh, this beer is awesome. This is amazing. And then we get tired of it because we've had a ton of it. And then we come back to Wave Pool and like, oh man, Wave Pool is awesome. Super clean, easy drinking, great, juicy IPA. So we'll see. It'll be interesting what Ring Pop does this year, especially if we will get into Connect within the next few months. So that'll really be it'll put it head to head with Wave Pool and Connect, and we can see the numbers and see how it does. But yeah, on a week-to-week basis, it's normally Wave Pool that is the top seller. It does slightly vary. Night Gallery's right up there as well. And then Ring Pop, yeah, you know what? You're right. I have seen a dip in it. I'm just thinking about it right now. Slightly, but it is definitely less than Wave Pool.
Cool. We've got a massive backlog on questions here, so let's try to blast through these in a little bit of short order. I apologize in advance to anybody who's not getting quite as long an answer, but my lord, the backlog's getting out of hand. Eric asks, anything that we can look forward to in a really malt-forward beer from you guys this year coming up that you can talk about?
Interesting. Yeah, not a style we do much of, as you all know. I looked at our production forecast for this year, and honestly, I can say that there is not a whole lot. I'm sorry to say that.
Fair enough.
Not a whole lot.
Okay. Yeah. Not a question, but a comment. Jeremy says, this is why God invented Mezcal. If you're a Mezcal fan, stay tuned to this channel. Something fun coming soon. Sales-specific question from Chris. Is it hard to get beers into golf courses, or is it just not the right market? It seems super rare to get good beer on a golf course.
Funny you should ask that. I could go on quite a bit about this, but that, be 100% honest with you, we looked at our top 10 accounts from last year, and 3 of them were golf courses. So we want to be in golf courses, and we're pushing hard, but it takes, I was setting up meetings closer to the end of last year, about that November area. I had a few meetings with golf courses, so hopefully we'll see our beers in a few more. But yeah, Lethbridge Country Club, they have our stuff, they move through it, they're awesome people there. Kirsten's awesome, and people there crush our beers. So
yeah, they really do. It's stupid numbers.
They do. I think that was honestly our number 2 account for the year. So it was just, trust me, we want to be in all the golf courses. They're a little bit tough to get into. Golf courses can be pretty cliquey, and yeah.
It's an underserved market that I think it's a dam waiting to burst. I think once golf courses start realizing that people are not going to them because the beer selection on their cart sucks and they're going to other courses, I think there's going to be a crush of people picking up on it. So yeah, you've got your toe in the waters now, and I think it's going to be a big thing coming down the way.
Yeah, great question.
Let's just run through. Wave pool's amazing. We need to get that in growlers again. I agree. We are still trying because growler sales with COVID are a little slower, and also because it's the dead of winter, and growlers for us at least are very much a summer thing. We're trying to do a little bit of a darker beer focus, but I mean, I think everybody here is pretty well firmly familiar how much I'm a giant geek for wave pools, so you'll see it on the growler station again, I promise. Here's an interesting one. What's is the smoothie beer going to be high alcohol, low alcohol? Where's that looking like it's going to come out?
Good question. I didn't get the ABV from the brewers, but it shouldn't be too high. I'd say less than 6%. So we're not going to go crazy with that one.
Okay. So, let's talk a little bit about the cellophane flowers. We've gotten, gloriously, wonderfully off topic, which I always appreciate. I like a good off topic tasting because I think we've covered some amazing points here. Not definitely always about the beers on the table, but I think we had a nice time. Cellophane flowers. So this is a passion fruit dry hopped sour. I don't believe we've ever seen a passion fruit sour, at least in this. There might have been one of the barrel aged beers from them that was passion fruit. If there is, forgive me, I've forgotten. I don't know. This is such a different beer in my glass now than when I popped a 4-pack with Nigel while we were unloading the truck when I got back from Calgary. Also, that was a special kind of hell. I came back from Calgary on the Tuesday of the windstorm last week. I've never, I'm a fairly confident, comfortable driver. I've never been really, truly frightened for hours in a row driving back Calgary to Lethbridge. That was terrifying. But when I got back, I was a little bit concerned because we'd announced that we decided at least, that this was going to be on the beer tasting. And when I got it back, I don't know, maybe it was the fact that it was the fear, or maybe it was just in a different place, but the passion fruit was a little muted. It was coming off very sharp and very green. And then the dry hopping was coming off very, very almost chemically at the back of my palate. Now I think the two have come together very, very well. Now I'm getting bright, fresh, juicy passion fruit. Now I'm getting really pretty, interesting hopping. It definitely has to be at the end because of all the fruit. It's a very different beer than these. And also one of the first that I've really had that combines fruit sour and dry hop sour. That's not a thing I've seen. Was there a major one that I'm missing there, Jesse, that's like famously known as like a fruit and dry hop sour? Because I can't think of one off the top of my head.
What's that? Sorry, I tuned out for 1 second there.
No, that's totally fair. I expect everyone here really isn't listening.
No, I'm listening. But were you asking if we've done one?
Yeah, I'm just curious. Like, this one is both fruit and dry hopped. Is this something where I can't think of like a common other fruit and dry hop sour that's just out there regularly that does both?
Yeah, regularly. That's a good point because obviously we know a lot of small batch ones. Even we came up with the passion fruit sour last summer, and passion fruit can work awesome in a sour. But part of a core lineup,
or even one that that's known that does both dry hopping and fruit at the same time.
Yeah, it's hard to. There might be a bunch that do dry hop, but they don't advertise it. I'm not 100% sure. You think you probably would, but sometimes it's just a zing word people put in. Sometimes they don't. One that you see around a lot, at least last summer, was the Rail Yard Peach Sour. I don't know if it was dry hopped or not, but I know it's one fruited sour that I saw around Calgary a lot. Yeah, what else is there? No, you're right. There isn't, off the top of my head, I can't think of one that I regularly see all the time.
I like the combination here. I like the little bit of like pretty hoppiness that's kind of present, but it's mostly passion fruit.
It's funny that you say that you have it today and that you're enjoying it more. Was it the day that you came back, was it packaged the same day or like just before that?
It was probably the day of or day before, yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. When we found that the beers definitely taste changes quite a bit within even a day. We've had some where we drink it off the bright tank and we're like, ooh, this is pretty green, we call it, pretty vegetal and hoppy. And by the time it sits in the bright tank, is canned the next day, and then sits for one more day, the flavor completely changes. And another interesting thing is that from the Alberta Beer Awards, there was a guy that he runs a little lab and he analyzed all the beers. And he found that the ones that won the most awards were about 6 weeks old. That seems to be the sweet spot for where beers taste great at 6 weeks. You'd think that freshest would taste best, but there's some beer styles do, but there's a lot that give it a little bit of time to mellow out, and yeah, it'll change quite a bit.
Well, that's something really funny that I found, and I talked about this a few weeks ago very briefly. The OT Double 500, when it first came out, I was like, oh wow, it's everything I like about 500, but worse somehow, and also higher alcohol and also sweeter. And then we had a 4-pack that a customer dropped. We ended up with a 3-pack basically. So we cracked one because it was there and it was around, and like it was, about 6 weeks, maybe 2 months old, maybe a little older, and it was just fantastic. I was absolutely stunned because I've always been like, no, fresher is better. I want the beer the day it was brewed. Damn it. Chill it off, get it done. I want it today. It was really surprising. Just, it's changed some of my perceptions of how IPAs work and my own biases.
Yeah, really something we've all learned at the brewery, actually. Everyone thinks like, oh, it must be awesome drinking right off the bright tank, but, and it's fun, obviously, and always great, but yeah, give it at least a few days a lot of times after it's canned, and even at that, like a double IPA will degrade pretty quickly, but probably at that 2-month mark, it's still looking pretty good. Like I said, 6 weeks or so, I bet you is right in the prime. Anything after that 3-month mark, usually you'll notice the aroma goes pretty quickly. But yeah, I never would have thought that either, right? Everyone thinks like fresh beer is best, but yeah, needs a little bit of time.
Okay. Eric actually comes to the same is true of coffee. A few weeks after it's roasted is apparently the sweet spot, which also I didn't know. So
there we go.
Eric, the knower of many things. And also, actually, speaking of Eric,
Eric.
I actually met with the printer today, so we are going to have all our new wine section signage, except South Africa, Spain, and Italy, should be here Monday or Tuesday, so that's exciting. And Eric did all of the art for that. Got some comments coming in on rankings now. You'll like this, Jesse. For Craig's rankings, he puts the Duotang first, the Cellophane Flowers second, the Nectarist third, and the Blindman fourth, which is identical to my ranking, actually. That's where I would have them too. Deirdre has 3 and 4 tied, and then 2 and 1, so effectively the same. Elizabeth has the Nectarist, the Duotang, and then onto the establishment and that. And then, yeah, Kevin has the Duotang as his number 1. Deanne has this as her number 1. Jeremy has this as his number 1. John has
you got
second.
the two kinds.
Yeah, like, I mean, the Duotang's pretty consensus the winner. I mean, I may have slightly biased it by calling it my love letter to Duotang. That might have had some impact, but less than you might think, because all of these people have attended enough of these to know to take me absolutely not seriously at all. My rankings are madness. No, I think that I think we've changed some minds on Duotang. It should no longer be the overlooked darling of the 88 lineup. So that's what I was aiming for out of tonight. So I think we've successfully accomplished that. And if nothing else, we've had a lot of fun and told a lot of really random tangential stories that didn't have anything to do with the beers we were tasting. And anytime we do that, it's a good tasting. Thank you, Jesse.
Yeah, that's always the fun of it. Yeah, you bet. Sorry for the dog bark in the background there. At least you got to see him, so that's all right. About to go on the walk, so you can be happy right away here. But yeah, it was a ton of fun, and I'm glad I could do this with you. And thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks, Jesse. Have a wonderful night. And thank you to
well.
all of you. So I'm Kyle with Andrew Hilton. We may see you this Friday night for Scotch tasting. I hope we'll see you at least for next Wednesday night for our Annex profile with Rupert from Annex. And yeah, thank you all so much for joining us. We'll see you in possibly Friday night. Good night.